Great. Good morning and welcome to the summer webinar series sponsored by the Office of Off-Campus Student and Family Engagement. I am your host, Jay Jackson, the coordinator for Family Engagement. Today's webinar is Transportation, presented by Brian Atkinson. Please note the following housekeeping guidelines. As a participant, you are unable to speak directly with presenters, but you may use the Q&A function on Zoom. And for the Facebook Live family, we are using the chat feature. We are unable to see you all. Your cameras and microphones have been muted for this webinar. If you have questions, they will be taken after the presentation. Please ensure that you do not place any personal information in your questions, like identifying information, excuse me. If your question is not answered during the presentation, you may reach out via email to the presenter. Once again, once the presentation is concluded, last questions will be taken and you may reach out specifically to Transportation Services. Thank you for participating in today's webinar. Here's your presenter, Brian Atkinson.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Atkinson. My title is Program Manager for Transportation Demand Management. And if that sounds like a made-up title, it's because it is. So years ago, UAB started looking at how people got to and from campus. And in that study, it quickly became a discussion about where do you park everyone's cars. So we looked at building a new deck, and the first one came back about $40 million, but that was just for the construction. If you add in the maintenance and all of that, these get up to $80 million. So that gets down to $30,000 to $60,000 per parking space, or more expensive than most cars that will park in the space. So, and that study said we needed maybe 4 of them. So the university realized that's not sustainable. And so we started focusing more on 3 more important things. And that's, how do we get you to campus? How do we get you or your student around once they're here? And how do we get them home or wherever they need to go after they finish their day? So luckily, UAB is already located in the central business district of the city of Birmingham, which means there are already many options for getting to, from, and around, including walking, bicycling, taking the bus, ordering on-demand ride service, or driving to campus. And a host of other current and future options are coming soon. Now, parents, you'll be happy to know that the best transportation mode for your students doesn't cost very much. Yes, I'm talking about walking, bicycling, their own 2 feet mainly. So UAB is pretty flat, and the whole campus is less than 1.5 miles at its widest point. In fact, almost every classroom, dining facility, and residence hall is within a 1/2 mile of the Hill Student Center. This means your student can get almost anywhere on campus within a 10 to 20-minute walk. Now, bicycle racks are located in nearly every building, and UAB Transportation will provide free helmets and U-locks for anyone that registers their bicycles with us, and that registration is free. Now, as you're probably already aware, transportation has been kind of undergoing some seismic changes. However, I like to say that transportation is kind of moving back to the future. And no, I don't mean that one of our professors is going to pop up in a time-traveling car, at least not that I'm aware of. What I mean is, for Birmingham to get it to where it wants to go, it needs to go back to parts of where it came from. You know, in 1948, we had 93 million trips taken by public transit. Today, that number is only about 3 million. Now, I know I can't see you, but I want you to raise your hands, and I'm serious, raise your hand if you've ever been on a subway, bus, or other public transit anywhere in the world, New York, Chicago, Paris, anywhere. Now, keep your hands up if you've been on a bus in Birmingham. Now, you all can't see this, but I've done this a lot of times live in the past, and about now, most everyone's hands just went down. Otherwise, we'd have a lot more than 3 million trips. Now, luckily, we have a bus service. We have local bus service called Max Transit. Now, you may be surprised to find out they operate over 20 routes, reaching most popular suburbs and popular destinations such as Summit, Lakeview, Botanic Gardens, the Art Museum. Now, for Max Transit, they have an app called My Stop Mobile, which provides real-time bus information and can help you plan your trip. Now, UAB operates its own on-campus shuttle circulator called the Blazer Express. Now, these buses run Monday through Friday with 6 routes running across campus. Now, while Max Transit operates on a fixed time schedule, the UAB buses run on a constant rotation to limit the amount of time anyone would have to wait between 2 buses arriving. Now, to find out, we also have this real-time bus information. This app, I highly suggest that you download this app. It's called Double Map, and it'll provide your student with information about the overall system with the ability to change the view to show only the routes specific to their need. Now, they can identify the location of the bus stops and see how long until the next bus or 2 arrives at their location. Now, I'll tell you, if you go to the app right now, some of the on-campus routes that you'll see are actually not showing just because some of those have been temporarily suspended. Ooh, and I just had a computer failure. Hold on one second. Let me pull that back up. You know, here we are, still working on post-pandemic technology issues. One second while this pops back up. I say 1 second. All right, I'm getting a little progress bar. Y'all, unfortunately, you don't get to see that it's actually going to come back up. All right.
So Brian, while we're waiting for you to come back up,
Yes.
Are there any options for students with e-bikes?
The best options for students with e-bikes is really going to be when they're visiting the classrooms to park at the bicycle racks. Make sure you have a good U-lock to use. Don't use a flimsy lock. There's some, if you go to different sites, they'll tell you, you should identify a lock that costs a certain percentage of the bike that you're using, and you might even want to consider 2 locks. But most of the dorms will, depending on the housing, last I'd heard is some of the dorms will allow you to bring those bikes indoors too.
And are there plugs available for the e-bikes?
We do not have plugs available for e-bikes at this time.
Okay.
Now, we really haven't had to deal with e-bikes too much, but I'm actually glad that is brought up because I need to put that on our radar as far as providing that service. All right, can you see the? You're
good to go.
I'm good to go. All right. So thank y'all for bearing with me as I tap dance through that technology issue. Now, as I mentioned earlier, transportation is changing rapidly, and so these new options are coming all the time. Another benefit of being at UAB is that your student will not only know about the latest transportation trends, such as e-bikes, but also how to access them and which ones work best for different trips. Now, for example, your student will have access to a car, whether they bring one to campus or not. So we partner with a group called Zipcar, which is a car sharing network. And they offer short-term vehicle rentals that include gas maintenance and insurance in the cost of the rental. Now, it's ideal for making a run to a big box store, pick up groceries or other household needs your student may have. Now, late last fall, a new ride-hailing service called Birmingham On Demand launched. And let me tell you, it's been loved. So it is, one student had contacted me and said they were having issues about getting to from work nearby campus. And they typically would bicycle, but had issues when it would rain. So I mentioned this Birmingham On Demand, and it's great because it operates very much like Uber and Lyft, and y'all are all probably familiar with it. Whereas an Uber Lyft may cost $5 to $8 for a one-way trip, the Birmingham On Demand is only $1.50. Now we do have Uber, Lyft, and other taxi services available. So that's another great option for getting off campus once your students here. Now, for trips on campus, we have two different services that provide on-demand van service. One is the safety escort, and you'll want to make sure your student knows about this. So these are no-cost rides limited to the UAB footprint, and they operate every day from 9 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. And you can use an app called Tap Ride, and I'll talk about Tap Ride in a second. Now, if they call the safety escort number, it's answered 24 hours a day. So students won't have any problem getting in touch with someone if they're in a need of additional security. Now, this Blaze Ride is for students with limited mobility. So to become eligible for Blaze Ride, your student would need to contact Disability Support Services, and that operates 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. Now, the safety escort is 9 p.m. to 5:30 a.m., and that's every day. So whether the weekend or not, they'll be able to. And both of these can be ordered, rides can be requested through the app Tap Ride. Now, during our service hours for safety and escort, anyone with a Blazer ID can request a ride via Tap Ride. Now, through the app, your student may request a ride, they'll receive an estimated arrival time for the van, and get notified when the vehicle has arrived. Now, please note, both Safety Escort and Blaze Ride may be ordered by phone, and you can see the phone numbers on the screen. And then also you can use this QR code to download the app. But the Safety Escort number, I want to make sure you know, is answered 24 hours a day. When we're not answering it, it automatically rolls over to UAB Police Dispatch. Now, what a lot of people want to know about is, how do I purchase a parking permit at UAB? Now, if your student is planning to bring a vehicle to campus, they must purchase a parking permit to park in UAB-owned facilities. Now, students purchase their permits online through our website. And please jot this down, but permit sales begin July 1st at 8 a.m. and sales are limited. Now, once on sale, your student may purchase a permit as soon as they have been accepted by the university and have created a Blazer ID. Your student will have the option to purchase either a single semester permit or a fall spring academic year permit. The permits in each zone are limited in quantity and sold on a first come, first served basis. If a particular zone is not visible, that zone is not available for sale at that time. Now, once your student purchases the permit, they'll receive a confirmation, and the permit is mailed to the address your student provides. So please be sure to check the address to avoid the permit being shipped to the wrong place. And the fees for the permit are applied to through student counting at the beginning of the fall semester. Now, please also know ADA accessible spaces are available at the same cost as other student permits, and your student will need to provide us with their state ADA parking registration in order to obtain that ADA accessible permit. Now, we require this because we know your student is grandma or grandpa's favorite grandchild, and they hate the thought of them having to walk all the way across that parking lot. But this is just to make sure that those spaces are available for those that truly need them. Now, you may be surprised to know we do not like giving out parking tickets, despite what your student may tell you. In fact, your student will never get a ticket from UAB if they park in their zone in a space that's not marked ADA, carpool, or designated for some other purpose. For instance, we give out a lot of tickets each year for students parked in the drives, along curbs, and my personal favorite, the spaces marked no parking. So please let your students know that the meters on the streets are not part of the UAB parking system. Those are City of Birmingham meters. So if you don't give them City of Birmingham money, your student will receive a City of Birmingham ticket. Now, the city just launched a new app, and it's so new that I didn't even get it on the presentation, called Park Mobile. So they can download the Park Mobile app, which will allow them to pay for the space through their smartphone, and even extend the amount of time if they realize they're not going to be able to move their car soon enough. Now, if your student does ever have trouble finding a space, by all means, have them contact our office. And this is important because if your student does not have a space to park, we need to know about it. We'll ask your student a few questions to help them find a space, and when necessary, we can offer them a temporary solution while we determine the source of the problem. Now, I beg of you, please don't call me on Monday, the first day of school, to yell at me because your student does not have parking. First of all, I want to warn you in advance that the first couple of days of classes are always the most difficult, but it will improve dramatically over the first 2 weeks. Now, if you do call me, the first question will be whether your student checked all of the spaces in all the portions of their zone. There is a big difference between not having a space to park and not being able to park in the most convenient lot in a particular zone. Now, I know none of you would yell at me, but just so you know, we do have cameras to help us identify what spaces are still available. Now, before I get to the end, I want to make you aware of a few other transportation services and options. If you or your student needs help with a dead battery, flat tire, keys locked in car, we have a motorist assistance service known as MARS. Now, if your student is not considering or is considering to not bring a car to campus, or you haven't told them that they're not going to get to bring a car to campus, these last few services, along with a couple of ones I've mentioned earlier, will be very helpful. Now, for anyone not bringing a car to campus, Commute Smart is a local government program that provides rewards for students and employees choosing to get to work or class any way other than driving alone. Along with cash rewards, they also provide emergency rides home. Now, any student coming from the Atlanta area or farther east or through the Atlanta airport should know that UAB has a low-cost airport shuttle with a stop on campus at Blazer Hall. Now, I just checked in with them yesterday, and it appears that they are scheduled to launch on September 1st. So they may not be available just before school, but they should be available as the school year progresses. Birmingham also offers transportation via the Birmingham International Fred Shuttlesworth Airport, and we also have very affordable trips through providers such as Amtrak, Greyhound, and Megabus. Now, finally, keep an eye out for some upcoming transportation options. So you see micro-mobility on there. That basically refers to shared use electric scooters and bicycles. Now, these actually just launched a few weeks ago and will be available. And you can actually find all of the information that I'm providing today through the UAB Transportation website. And now coming in 2022 is what's called bus rapid transit. Now, these are buses that operate on dedicated lanes that helps them to get light prioritization, meaning those buses are going to move through the city much more quickly. And so that can be an option as you start looking, especially as your student progresses from the freshman and sophomore, and if they decide to move off campus, that may be another option for them moving forward. Now, finally, I want to provide you all with the options for getting in touch with us. Please urge your students to follow us on Facebook or Twitter to get updates on information impacting transportation to, from, and around campus. You'll also be able to find our phone number, our website, and our email. Now, thank you for your time, and please don't hesitate to contact us with any questions, but at this point, we can open it up to questions. I believe actually we're going to launch the poll first, right? Okay, we can't hear you, but please answer this quick poll. There's only 4 questions.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Yes, we have already
Makes
launched
it
the
more
poll,
fun.
and they should be able to answer the questions anonymously.
Great. So yeah, these questions really just kind of help give us a better sense of your thoughts and to help make sure you understand some of the key aspects of transportation.
Brian, while the poll is going on, what
Yes.
parking is available for students in the residence halls?
So at this point, they basically have 2 options. It's going to be Zone A or Zone 7. Depending on where they're if it's a freshman incoming, chances are they're going to be in either Blazer, Camp, Gold, or McMahon halls. and those students should go with Zone A because that's right across the street. Zone 7 is really more for those that are in Blunt or Rast Hall.
Do we have any more questions? You can feel free to send your questions in while the poll is going on. Meredith, if we have any Facebook live questions, would you let us know?
Absolutely.
I'm going to take the lack of questions to mean that
I
we
have,
did such a great
they're
job.
coming in. You did an excellent job.
Well, thank you.
Will parking be paid for through housing or parking? So how are they billed for parking?
It's billed separately, but it will come through their student accounting. You'll pay for it the same place you pay for tuition or any other fees.
And if my student doesn't bring a car in the fall, will they have the option to get a parking permit in the springtime?
Absolutely. The permits are sold, reopen for sale every semester. So, I highly suggest that most freshmen don't buy a permit their first semester because there are lots of different options for getting around, and you might actually find it's less expensive, and they're not going to really need to go anywhere else. But there's food on campus, there's activities on campus. It just helps them engage in the community a little better.
Will they have to pay for their parking? You said the parking, we have the results from our parking in.
Yay. All of the above. that tells me, thank y'all for answering this. This really tells me that y'all were listening. And that I was very clear in the places I needed to be clear. So thank y'all very much for answering this. So Jay, what was the question that you had?
When parking permits go on sale, do they have to pay for them right then, or will they be billed after the semester starts?
It won't be until the semester starts. So when the student orders them, they order them through. So they go to the UAB Transportation website. There's actually a little tab now that says apply for parking. You click on that, read the instructions, click on it, and it opens up a parking portal where they'll actually purchase it. And then once it purchases, those charges are basically held until the beginning of the semester. So all you need to know is your student won't be billed for parking until the semester begins.
And you're going to make that itemized on their bill correctly, so they'll know that they're paying for parking?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe that, sir, but you might have to check with student accounting to be sure.
And can you put in the chat the link for the parking permits when they go on sale? Can you add that in the chat?
It's actually the UAB Transportation at uab.edu. That's the best place, and then you'll see parking on there. And if they have any questions, they can email the transportation at uab.edu.
Okay. Are bicycles authorized in the green spaces and sidewalks?
Yes. Now, we hope that people would use the roads while they're on bicycles. If you are on the sidewalks, like you're not going to get a ticket for being on the sidewalk. But if you're using it on the sidewalk, just make sure that you're going at the same speed as pedestrians, and you're not causing a hazard to them. But we do not write tickets for that, as long as they're not acting foolish.
Okay.
Brian, a question that I know some family members have is for our students who are living on campus, when they are filling out their parking permit, does it designate, the questions obviously are about like where they can park. And so do students have to designate that they're a residential student versus an off-campus student? And then does that help dictate to them which parking options are available to them?
Yes. So there is a blank that says classification that will say either housing or commuter student. Basically, the difference is if you're a housing student, you're living in UAB housing. If you're a commuter, you're not living in UAB, one of the UAB residence halls. Now, they do have the ability to change that, but we do verify the housing list to make sure that people that are getting the housing are housing, and that those that are getting the commuter spaces are commuters. So they shouldn't have to change it. There are some instances where someone may have gotten into the residence halls late. And so those students may need to change it to update it, just to let them know, but we'll verify the information. It does change the different zones that they'll have access to. So a housing student has the choice between zone 8 or zone 7. Again, if they're a freshman going to be living in around Gold Hall, Blazer Camp, they should choose zone A. That's going to be the best one for them. Zone 7 is going to be more for Rast and Blunt. But then if they are going to be living off campus, they have various different options. And we actually have estimated walking distances and interactive map to help the student determine which of those zones would be best for them.
Okay, Brian, I have a couple more questions coming in. So if my student decides to bring a car to campus and doesn't want to get a parking permit because they're going to commute on their feet, how would that work? Because parking is expensive sometimes.
Right. So basically, a student's not going to bring a car and they're just going to be walking.
No, they will bring a car, but they're going to walk to class. They're still getting a permit, typically.
Well, I mean, I would suggest that you leave the car at home. I mean, I know various different, depending on where home is, can make a difference in it. Their car's probably not going to get touched very often. And so I don't know if it's the best in financial sense. I would suggest, from parents, that you look at how often will they really be needing to get off campus, and are some of the services, whether it be Uber and Lyft or the Birmingham On Demand or the electric scooters and bicycles, if those would be a cheaper option than paying for that permit for that time. So you're going to have real conversations about, like, how often do you really need your vehicle, and does it make sense to have it? Now, if that's the case, it really doesn't make a difference to our side. They would still just need to buy a permit, and they don't move it. They don't move it. So,
thank you. Also, so say I get my parking permit July 1st, and I decide to change vehicles. How do I go about updating my vehicle registration information?
So there's a tab on that student parking page just below the apply for parking. You click on that and you can manage your vehicle. Basically, you go back into the parking portal, you click select vehicles, and then click add vehicle. Just enter the information, your license plate and the vehicle information, and then you're done.
Brian, can you talk about safety, or the ways that UAB works with the UAB Police Department, such to monitor our parking lots and areas around campus?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll tell you kind of a funny story. Actually, 3 days before we got sent home for the pandemic, there was a school of public health had one of their classes looking at safety on campus, because they thought, well, that's a big issue. And the funny thing that came out of it was they all perceived it as such a problem. And then they went and pulled the data and realized that really safety wasn't as much of a concern as they thought. So they were focused more on exactly the question you're asking, like, here are the things that UAB Transportation does. Like, we work closely with UAB Police. So each of our parking areas have these blue lights and help phones that students can use to call in case of some sort of emergency. We also have our safety escort for late night from 9 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. They can request a ride and get picked up, at the front door and dropped off directly, at the place they're going. But we also have things like Rave Guardian, and some of those other things, and most all of our parking areas also have cameras too. So a lot of that goes into the prevention of crime, and and nothing's 100% foolproof, but we do try, and we also have enforcement staff that are constantly circulating, and UAB has its own police force, so it monitors the entire campus. So that's, it's a close working relationship because, we understand that is a concern that people have. And so we try to do things that help limit that concern.
Thank you very much.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, we'd like to thank you all for participating. Oh, well, here we come. If you have multiple students at UAB, so say I have a senior and a freshman, can they share a parking pass? Is that allowed, or do they have to have their individual parking passes?
Well, if they're bringing individual cars, they'll need an individual pass. So basically, if they're taking another space, they will need to have a second permit. We highly suggest that they just carpool. We actually have some carpool programs where students can ride together, and those are actually really good parking spaces. So we've got reserved carpool spaces that are in some of the prime locations on campus.
And Brian, we know that you all work closely with public safety in the UAB police. The Rave Guardian app, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that the security app as well?
I believe so. I would probably have them check out the UAB police website for better information about that, because they actually manage that one.
I can give a little bit of information there. Rave Guardian helps to, is an option for students that they are able to plug in a key number of people that they find to be their main contacts. And if they are walking across campus at certain periods of the night, where maybe, or at any time, or it doesn't even have to be across campus, but if they know that they're going to be walking from or driving from one place to another, and it's going to take them maybe, and on a normal day, it would take them 10 minutes or so to walk that place, then they can set a timer on their phone for maybe 12 minutes to give themselves an opportunity to run into and say hi to a friend. That if from time that they leave the building one to get to their next place or wherever it is that they're heading to, if at the end of the 12 minutes they have not turned that app off, it will automatically send a notification to those individuals that they have pre-established out there, saying that kind of tells them exactly where they last were, and et cetera, and things along those lines. So it's a really great app to kind of to add to the sense of security and create a true element of security for our students to be able to always report out exactly where they are and where they're going. And that's what the app allows them to do. It is different than like obviously the Be Alert text messages that UAB sends out.
Right. And we tend to just also make sure that students are being aware of their surroundings when they're on campus, whether they were here or off campus or even at home. You just stay aware of your surroundings, and you should be just fine.
Brian, do you usually run out of parking permits in the middle of the semester? And say a student decides to get a car and they need to get a parking permit in the middle of the semester, how would that work for them?
Really depends. So the pandemic has created a little tighter parking, but we don't expect to run out. We never actually run out of parking permits before. Matter of fact, the Zone C has never once been full since I've been here in the last 3 or 4 years. So I don't particularly see that being a problem. If a student didn't bring a car to campus and decides, mid-semester, they should just contact the UAB Transportation office, and they would actually buy the permit from our office, and then we can tell them. I'd say call before you come, but we'll find out a solution for you.
Okay, Zone C is going to be full this year.
Zone C is going to probably be full this year. And if your student is off campus and using Zone C, people that use Zone C know that there's a secret to it. It's actually as quick, if not better, and costs less than most of the other zones, because you basically get on and you take a 5-minute bus ride. So basically you can get Zone B walking for Zone C pricing. It's kind of how we joke about it. But many of the students loved it because they say, you know, you can just pull in, you get a spot real quick. The buses are constantly rotating, so there's never more than like a 4 to maybe 10 minutes at the worst wait, and then they can get back to campus, no problem.
And once again, to reiterate, the safety escort can be utilized on UAB's campus throughout.
Yes, and actually, if you go to our website, under the transportation options, you'll see a tile for safety escort. And on that, you'll see the actual, the full area that it covers. And it extends past UAB's exact footprint. Like it runs all, it does operate here at UAB Transportation Office in Zone C, but it actually runs a little bit south of campus and as far north as Railroad Park.
Okay. And do you know the plans for future getting cameras, more cameras around campus?
We're constantly adding cameras. That we went through a technology upgrade a couple of years ago, and part of that process is additional cameras as we're moving forward. It's great to be able to see the feedback. Yay for cameras. We like the cameras too. And I did also want to point out, like, I keep hearing stories that there's free parking around UAB. I'm not really sure where those are. There are some areas that on street where they don't have meters. The likelihood of getting those is pretty slim because, you know, they're probably high demand. You know, if you're not going to bring a car or not purchase a permit through UAB Transportation, there are different providers around campus that you might be able to make arrangements with. Otherwise, again, I would check and see how often you really need to have your vehicle and see whether or not wouldn't be more cost effective to just use, you know, some of the other transportation options we provide.
Okay. Well, once again, I'm gonna last call for questions. We still have some good participants on. We thank you for participating today and coming to our webinar. We greatly appreciate you, Brian, for presenting, and you gave us some great information, and we hope that everybody has a great fall semester. Once again, once the webinar ends, you may be able to contact Brian as the presentation shows on your screen. And if you need to contact our office information is behind me. I'm not sure if you can see it, but we are uab.edu/families and families@uab.edu. That was a tongue twister.
Try saying my title 3 times fast.
Thank you all, and you all have a great day. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Bye.